there's a little bit of a perimeter that's been set up here. So what's blocked off, Racine? Be down into the Taylor is blocked from Racine to Loomis. Got the police helicopter down there, down low. Got a shot of the police chopper. There it is. Alright, so Taylor between Loomis and Racine. SWAT vehicle. Oh, in the park. So is it Taylor between Loomis and Troop that's blocked off? But the main activity is along Taylor between Loomis and Troop, I take it. All right. Go ahead. Hi, good morning, folks. This is Chris Habermill in Chopper 2 on Facebook Live here, and thank you for tuning in. We've got a developing situation kind of near the medical district, just to the south and west of the downtown area here in Chicago. Apparently an officer has been wounded in a shooting 12th District officer taken over to Stroger Hospital, a condition unknown, but fellow officers have swarmed into this area in the 1500 block of West Taylor. So basically Taylor between Loomis and Troop is blocked off, and they're actively seeking the individual who fired the shot or shots. Circumstances behind what happened here, not exactly clear. You can see the police helicopter is circling down low. We're well above, looking at this with our telephoto lens to stay out of the way. Yeah, I can hear you. Okay. I can hear you. I can hear you, Liz. Coming live. Hi Ryan, we're taking a look at the number of the streets that are just to the south and east of the medical district here, and streets are being blocked off as we speak. We do know that a section of Taylor has been blocked off. You had mentioned the 1300 block west, so basically between Loomis and Troop, that's shut down. There are also other officers that have been pulling into this scene out here. There's actually multiple scenes, not only where that officer was shot, but also where they're actively seeking a suspect right now. So we'll push back in on that intersection that we're over, and you can see that there is a multitude of officers that have swarmed into this area. There are cars that are shutting down streets as the search is underway for the individual that fired shots in the direction of this 12th District officer. So more officers pulling in as we speak. We're following this developing story, and we will have the latest as soon as it becomes available. Ryan, back to you. Okay, very good. Yeah, there's the mobile command center. So what is that intersection there? That's Loomis and Roosevelt right now, okay. What is that, UIC police? Yeah. Parts of Roosevelt now are shut down. Here we go. Ryan, there are dozens of officers that are coming into and responding to this call. As you would imagine, one of their own has been shot and wounded. We don't know how badly he or she is over at Stroger Hospital right now being treated for obviously a gunshot wound. Where and how serious that is has yet to be disclosed. However, as that is underway and that officer is getting treatment, their fellow officer is out, have pulled out into the street here on Loomis, on Roosevelt, on Taylor. There's obviously a manhunt underway for the individual that was involved in this shooting. Obviously, they fired at the officer and then no doubt ran off somewhere in this neighborhood. So you have officers from, you see that black and white squad car on Roosevelt there, that's UIC police. They're helping out their brothers in arms here, the Chicago Police Department. They're setting up some sort of a perimeter. We also have a SWAT vehicle that's pulled in. You can see that armored vehicle coming down from the upper right there, going westbound on Roosevelt, coming up to Loomis and going past the UIC squad car right there. So that armored vehicle is going to be obviously utilized in whatever tactical response that they have to this. So as they get that set up here, we're going to widen out just a little bit so we're not actually unmasking any of the tactics that are being used down here. The Chicago Police Department helicopters overhead. We have numerous squad cars in the street on a multitude of streets here coming out of Little Italy into the medical district. Also, you see that big white vehicle that kind of looks like a step van. That's their mobile command vehicle. That's also on location here. So it's a very dynamic situation. It is just unfolding. They're looking for an individual or individuals here. We believe it's one person that was involved in this, but we're waiting on some confirmation here. Obviously, the police department is extremely busy right now trying to track that individual down. So those of you who may be watching this who have business over at Stroger Hospital or in the medical district, going to have to come off of there from the Eisenhower Expressway or points west. Don't come in from the south and east because you're going to be running into a lot of street closures and a lot of officers walking around out here and responding to various locations where they believe the individual may be at. So we're monitoring that from a distance, staying out of the way of the Chicago Police Department. Push in, Jess. Push into the... You can bring it back to me if you want. Yeah, keep it tight on that intersection for a minute. go back to me if you want. And that's Loomis right there. A block south of Roosevelt. Standing by. Ryan, as you would imagine, when you have a significant incident like this, where you have an officer who has obviously been injured by gunfire, you will have a response of significant proportion from a multitude of districts filtering in here to the 12th. And you can see officers are up and down Loomis here, a little bit south of Roosevelt Road. That one squad car just pulling into and making a left onto westbound Roosevelt Road. Give you some sort of an idea of the directions that we're looking at here. There's a black and white squad down there. It looks kind of out of place. It's not. That's because we're right here by the UIC Chicago Circle campus. So the UIC police are also assisting the Chicago Police Department in traffic flow control and some sort of a establishing perimeter and keeping bystanders away. A Chicago Police Department helicopter circling down low. You saw it passing from left to right in the frame there. Mobile command van is situated, parked on Loomis a little bit south or north of Roosevelt Road. And so parts of Roosevelt are impacted. Loomis, Racine, Taylor, where apparently this originated. So we're working to get more information as to exactly what prompted the shooting. Was this a traffic stop or some other sort of altercation on the street? And as soon as we know more, we'll bring it to you. Ryan? Is that Racine right there? Yeah, that right there where that squad is at. Is that a county sheriff's pickup truck right there? Or is that another UIC car? That's another UIC. No, might be, yeah. Showa, Loomis, and Taylor. Mugo was talking about it. So lower part of your screen there, lower to the right. Not that low. Right in the middle, dead square in the middle. Up and to the right. Up and to the right. To the right, please. To the right. Over on Loomis. Yeah, so that's Loomis and Roosevelt. So come to the right. To the right. Right in there. Right there. Yeah, that's kind of the epicenter of where it started. go ahead. 10-4, thank you. Yeah. Okay. Stand by, here we go. Yes, keep it right there. Well, Ryan, we're kind of over Washburn, near Washburn and Loomis, and basically what we're seeing here is that there's, I can't tell you how many acres of crime scene tape that have been put up in various points around here. So what officers are doing right now is they are trying to backtrack and deconstruct and then reconstruct exactly what happened. The steps that the officer took, the steps that the offender took, we're listening to see if that individual has actually been placed in custody, if they've tracked them down. It seems to be a slightly more relaxed atmosphere here rather than officers responding rather quickly with squads back and forth. They've blocked off a very kind of a definitive area. So parts of Loomis, Taylor, Racine, Roosevelt, and Washburn, those are all shut down. So anybody who has any kind of business in this part of Little Italy, the medical district, UIC, you may want to hold off on just a little bit. Call anybody that you need to call and let them know that you obviously got some police activity on the street out here. So we know that the 12th district officers over at Stroger and their fellow officers have fanned out across this area here in the aftermath of that officer being wounded, to track down the offender, get that individual hopefully in custody, and then deal with them as the case may be. But right now, what we're seeing is officers that are parked on the curbs, basically. We're still seeing traffic going through a lot of the neighborhood here, you can see. Coming in northbound on Loomis, there's some civilian automobiles that are actually being allowed rather close to where this all started in the maybe a little bit before 9 o'clock. I think basically the first information that we received went out right around the top at 9 o'clock. So it would have been a little bit before that, the latter half or latter part of the 8 o'clock hour, right before 9 a.m. So again, what we're seeing, we do know that the officer, the condition is unknown, but Marissa Parr is over there at Stroger Hospital. Mugo Adigwe is down on the street level. We're up above. So we're covering this story from as many different angles as possible, given the fact that it is dynamic, it is changing, and that there are officers all over the place down here trying to investigate exactly what happened. So we're going to shift the camera back off to the right just a little bit away from that housing complex in the trees off of Loomis and Washburn, go down here towards Loomis and Roosevelt. And we're looking kind of, and I thank Jessica Malina, who's running the camera system, Mike Sypian, who's doing the orbiting here in Chopper 2, for keeping us in on this and out of the way of the Chicago Police Department, because they do have an aircraft that is circulating down below. So we have officers that have been put in place for traffic flow control, and you can see that basically just about 3 out of the 4 corners here at Roosevelt and Loomis have been blocked off. There's still civilian cars going through, mixing in with police cars that are going back and forth doing whatever individual tasks they have been given to accomplish. So even though in the upper right corner you can see a big white, what looks like a step van, you've got a mobile command center that's set up, not seeing that really being placed into action right now, but it is on scene, so that's in staging. And then coming back out on our shot here, and we're going to tilt down towards, again, getting down towards Loomis and Washburn. because as we come around here, we got a lot of old growth trees that kind of obscure what we are actually looking at. So as we make our orbits here, we can look at different aspects of this. So again, things seem to be in the right lower corner, happening around a housing development over here, housing complex, and also out in the street. So we'll gather some more information. We'll be back to you, but we'll be in the air here circulating over the scene in Chopper 2. Ryan, back to you. Yeah. Okay. So that would be Taylor and Loomis. Trying to get a bendable bus through here. Off of eastbound Taylor to northbound Loomis. So to the left. That's a tight fit. So down along, we'll push into Taylor Street. That seems to be where the lion's share of the squads are at. Taylor Street, that's Taylor and Troop. And then along Taylor over to Loomis. Well, there's going to be Superintendent Brown is probably going to be speaking here shortly over at Stroger. Hi, Ryan. Yeah, I hear you loud and clear. And basically what we're doing is occasionally you'll see the camera widen out and kind of take a look at different aspects of where the road is blocked off here. We're just trying to get a handle on whether or not it's a perimeter that has been set up, as which would kind of allude to the fact that somebody is still on the loose, or whether it is just separate scenes here where it actually began and where potentially things could have ended. So that being the case, occasionally you'll see the helicopter go from a wide shot to a tight shot to a wide shot. Let's see if we could drop south. That's Loomis and Roosevelt. Let's see if we could drop south, or drop north, I should say. Tilt down a little bit, Jessica, there, and we'll take a look at Loomis and Taylor, as Mugo was talking about. She's right there. Yes, go ahead. Yeah, Ryan, the number one thing that Superintendent Brown is going to do is meet with the family, meet with the officer there, meet with the ER folks, and find out how that individual is doing, how his officer is doing. So the first and foremost is to contact the family, reach out. This happens, you know, when a police officer or a firefighter is injured, that the command staff is going to want to get in there and talk to the family first of all, and give them every reassurance that everything is being done to catch the person or individual that did this, and get absolutely chapter and verse everything that's going on with that officer's medical condition there, because they are responsible, and they are, as a commander, the different levels of the command staff, you are responsible for those directly underneath you. And as the superintendent, basically, you're responsible for all the officers that are out there on the street. And no doubt there's a lot on Superintendent Brown's mind. There was going to be a meeting earlier today at 10 o'clock with Mayor Lightfoot there, discussing the season and basically what's going to be done here over this long 4th of July holiday. It's still, even though the temperature is a little bit less out here, it's a little bit more comfortable. It's still basically hot. There are a lot of people on the street, and the police officers are going to be out in force. And as you can see right now, already we're getting things kicked off to a violent start. So we hope for the best for that police officer there and all the other officers that are working so diligently to bring this to a resolution right there and catch up with the individual who was responsible. So going back in tight again, we're taking a look at Taylor, between basically Loomis and Troop. That's all shut down. There's dozens of squads all up and down all of the different streets here. So we have parts of Taylor, Loomis, Racine, Roosevelt, Washburn over by Abla Homes. Those are all shut down right now, the gathering point for officers. So there are officers in the street, officers on foot in the cars as well, and traffic over here. You know, the least of everybody's worries is traffic when you're concerned with the welfare of an officer who's been wounded. But just to let you know, folks, stay away from this if you don't have emergency business, and even if you do over at Stroger, it's going to be coming in from the west, and kind of stay away from the area immediately to the south and east of the medical campus, getting over by UIC and Chicago Circle, and also into Little Italy. So it's a very congested scene right now. Things are starting to kind of getting a little bit at the ebb and flow of the scene. You're getting more officers that are pulling in here. Other officers are being cut loose and sent back to their districts because they've come in mutual assistance here to get as many individuals, officers on the scene as possible to catch up with that person or persons that was responsible for this. And what is basically happening here, that the officers that are not actively engaged in the search for the suspect, the other detectives and other officers that are involved here, are going back over the chain of events. No doubt, not only through police radio and the initial response, first responding officers in here, all the way to the point where that officer was taken from the scene over to Stroger Hospital. They're going to backtrack and start the investigation right now. How did it happen? What kind of weapon was involved? Is there a weapon that's been tossed away? Was there a weapon that was recovered? And what actually was what began this whole chain of events? What initiated this? Was it, we'd heard that it was a domestic disturbance possibly. We need to kind of firm that up a little bit and get a little bit more illustration on what, some backstory on exactly what happened there. And then again, if that was the case, which if it was in fact a confirmed domestic dispute, those are very, very dangerous situations for officers to get in. Emotions run high, and when there are weapons involved, things can go wrong very quickly. Ryan, back to you. The chopper still circulating, or did they cut him loose? Is the police chopper still circulating, or did they cut him loose? Okay. Okay. Sure. On me at any second. What was that? Oh, okay. Standing by. Standing by. Ryan, what we're looking at here is we've kind of been keeping tabs on this 1300 block of West Taylor. So it's basically Taylor between Loomis on the west and Troop on the east, and the officers have filled in here. You mentioned earlier that a fellow officer had taken the officer that was wounded over to Stroger Hospital utilizing a squad car, and a lot of times that's what you will find when something happens on the street and an officer is wounded, that there's really not a lot of time to wait for medics to arrive on the scene as quickly as they can get there. Stroger is only just blocks away, just to the west of this scene here, so lit up with lights and siren, and just convoying, get a few cars in line there, just load and go. And you know, in the fire service, when you have a critical situation, a lot of those ambulances are diesel, so you just say treat it with diesel. In other words, you get behind the wheel and you get going, because you want to get that individual to a higher level of care. You don't want to spend any time, just seconds count when an individual is wounded, and especially don't know how seriously. It's very misleading depending on a wound where it may be. You could hit an area which is very vascular and you get a lot of bleeding, and it's not that bad. And other places that you may not get a lot of bleeding, and it is. So while you're in the process, it's a very critical situation, very stressful situation. Officers there, obviously one of their own has been hurt, has been wounded by a gunfire, so you get that individual as quickly as you can to the highest level of care that you can, and get them over to the ED, the emergency department over here at Stroger Hospital, which is just blocks away from where we're at. So that being the case, the officers being treated, Superintendent Brown is over there, we're all over there on the ground getting ready for any kind of a statement that comes out from the superintendent. And obviously there's a lot of different dynamics that are going on here. You had the initial emergency response. You had an officer wounded. You had that officer being taken there by a fellow officer over to the hospital. You've got treatment at the hospital while other officers have been called in to get on the street and track the individual who was responsible down. Was there a foot chase? Was there a car chase? Was there somebody holed up somewhere? All of that remains to be seen, and we're waiting on the details to come out here. So 12th District officer being treated over at Stroger. This scene here, I'm not seeing any more officers coming in. As a matter of fact, a fairly good sign that this scene is getting under control and getting into kind of the next phase here is that a lot of the squad cars that were here are starting to kind of drift away. They're being allowed back to go to their respective districts and what have you, because they responded in here to help. It's better to have more people than not enough. So officers came in from all directions. Also, Chicago Police helicopter that had been doing orbits over here has also been cut loose. So they're going to go back to base there, and that's another sign that we're getting more stability in the dynamics of this situation here. So what you're looking at is kind of a wide shot of the buildings along the 1300 block of West Taylor, and that apparently is the epicenter of where things started this morning, and where the lion's share of officers have gathered right now. So you've got about a dozen squad cars in the street lining up in front of the buildings here on West Taylor, and this is looking at Taylor a little bit west of Troop, and any civilian cars that you may see moving, those are folks that, I got to go to work, I got to go do whatever. All right, we're going to let you out, but you're not going to be able to park back in here again because they need to process whatever's gone on. We don't know if it happened inside a building or out on the street. That remains to be seen. If it was a scene that happened out on the street, obviously you're going to have physical evidence that the officers have to recover from the street, perishable evidence, whether it's inside or outside, whether or not more than one shot was fired. If that's the case, you may have rounds that are embedded in a wall or bounced off a sidewalk. You're going to have shell casings obviously ejected from the weapon that was used, and maybe even a weapon that was recovered. So all of that remains to be seen. Again, when we do something like this that's live and in real time, you're seeing it right along as close as possible to what is happening, the action on the ground in association with and keeping out of the way of Chicago police officers. So we recommend that everybody stay away from this area. This is southeast of the medical campus here, over getting into Little Italy and the UIC area. So a bunch of different streets are involved. Taylor, Loomis, Troop, Washburn, Roosevelt, parts of those are shut down. Ryan, back to you. Just keep it on Taylor. So down over by the library there. Okay, after Marissa, we're up again. Stand by. And the word that you got, Ryan, of an offender being in custody, that squares with what I've been watching here over the last about half an hour or so, as more officers have been cut loose to go back to their individual districts here that responded in. And that speaks volumes as to the rapid response after that officer was shot. Obviously went out on Chicago Police Department radio that an officer had been hit, and another officer was taking that individual over to Stroger, that officer there for immediate treatment there. So the speed at which the offender was apprehended, and it speaks to how many officers filtered in here, how many officers actually were intimately involved with what actually took place. In other words, they had eyes on the individual that obviously tried to elude the officers here in the immediate aftermath of that officer being wounded. So while that officer is being treated and the offender is being processed, don't know if that individual went directly to a station or actually went over to the hospital as well for treatment, because a lot of times apprehensions there include getting those individuals to the hospital after they are taken into custody. Now it's time to backtrack. Now it's time for all the officers that are here to go back and assist the detectives and the forensic evidence people in the technicians in going back up the chain of events. Just like any other critical situation, you need to have a start, a middle, and a finish. We've got apparently the finish with the word that an offender is in custody. So now you have to backtrack along there. Where did the shooting actually happen? Why did that individual open fire? What kind of weapon or weapons were involved? Where those actual weapons, were they actually recovered, or was it tossed away somewhere? If that individual ran off and there you broke contact visually with that individual, and exactly what sparked this? Was this a domestic situation, as we've heard? And any officer will tell you, any patrol officer, that when you are summoned to a domestic situation, those are very hot and intense times. Emotions are running high, and officers show up, and that's the last thing the parties are involved really may want. So the officer could be a target of some of the angst that is already present at a domestic situation. So we're following all aspects of this story, and we'll be overhead circulating around the scene here. Ryan, back to you. The command post put in front there? Is that moved into position on Loomis or on Taylor? So I believe it's one of those buildings across the street from it, on our side, on the south side of Taylor. If you can go in on that, because they will put that right in close proximity to where it actually happened. Because they'll be cycling your forensic guys through there and anybody else who actually has contact with the scene. where your detectives aren't right in front of that right there. Four zero. Okay. No, we're going to have to get fuel like now, because we're going to be, let's see, we only have about 30 minutes of fuel, so that only takes us until 10 minutes to the 11, so we're going to need to get gas now. Yeah, if you want the absolute top of 11, that is absolutely the last. We'd have to be right in the first few minutes of the 11, and then we got to scoot. Chopper to the base, we can do the absolute top of 11, but then we got to scoot. we can make it to the top of 11, but then we're going to need to get gas like right then. If you want us deep in the 11 or through the 11, we're going to have to get fuel now. That is correct, Courtney. That is correct. Can we get fuel at the vertiport? Yeah, well, we got the vertiport right underneath us. So if we go down now, we can get back for the top. All right, we'll stay up, and that being the case, then we will, right after we do the top of 11, then we'll have to go for fuel, and we'll be out for the rest of the 11 then. Okay, stay up, we'll do the top of 11, then skedaddle. You're hearing the narration there, Jess? That the offender waited for officers to get off of an elevator and then opened fire. So that would be the, yeah, that would be the big one there, because none of the other ones would have an elevator. We're clear. And Chopper 2, I hear we're clear. So you still want us up over the scene, or you want us to land for fuel now? Chopper 2 to base, we are clear. So if that's the case, we can land for fuel at the vertiport, which is only several blocks away from the incident scene, and be back up for the entirety of the 11. What's your pleasure? Chopper 2 to base on F2. We got one down low right there. 10-4, Courtney, thank you. Just trying to plan for us too. Who is that? Hey, Dino, go ahead. Okay, got it. All right. Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. Hey, Dino, we're going to power down. We're going to knock this down so we can land.
Folks, the mayor of the soup will be talking to you in a bit.
Man.
If we're ready to get started, we're going to get right to it. We're going to give a little bit of a description of what happened, what we know now. Obviously, it's early in the investigation, and we'll update you throughout the day as we learn more about what happened, but we won't take many questions, and we want you to stay on topic as much as you can. Thank you very much. So at 8:27 a.m. this morning, our officers responded to a domestic call, or a domestic disturbance in the 12th district at 1342 West Taylor Street. As officers arrived, they got on the elevator, went upstairs, and as soon as they got off the elevator to go to the apartment, they were fired upon by the offender, who we have in custody. We have recovered a gun. Our officers did not fire their weapons. Responding with our officer is a University of Illinois at Chicago police officer who was monitoring our radio, and as the officers came back downstairs to get the wounded officer to the hospital, the University of Illinois at Chicago officer helped transport him in his squad car here, likely saving his life. Again, we do have an offender in custody. We have recovered a gun. Our officer is in serious condition with multiple gunshot wounds. And I'll have the mayor come up, but before she does, I just want to highlight the difficulties and dangers of being a police officer in this country. It hadn't been more dangerous in decades. But it also highlights the bravery and courage that our officers exhibit every day, to include their dedication and commitment to protecting the people of Chicago. And with that, I'll turn it over to the mayor and come back for any questions.
Let me start where the superintendent left off. Every single day, on every watch, brave men and women of the Chicago Police Department put on their uniform, their badge, and go out to protect each and every one of us. We have to remember that officers every single day are risking their lives for our safety, and today underscores that. I will also say this. We have seen over the last 2 years a significant surge in domestic violence related calls, but also domestic violence related homicides and shootings. And let me just share a few statistics with you. Domestic related homicides by firearm and non-fatal shootings have increased 125% since 2019. DV non-fatal shootings have increased by 80% just over the last 2 years alone. And domestic-related homicides are up 23.5% compared to this time last year. I think this brings a very sobering set of context to what our officers are facing every single day. Somebody calls into 911. It gets coded as a domestic-related call. Obviously, the call takers and dispatchers are asking all the necessary questions. But as we saw today, you never know what happens until you get on the scene. And so we've got to make sure that we're addressing this surge. And I urge you in the media to talk about the fact that there has been this unbelievable increase in domestic violence-related homicides and shootings. It is a huge public health and public safety issue, which we're working diligently to address. But we have a long way to go as a society in understanding the danger to people in the household, the danger to our police, but the danger to ordinary residents when domestic violence happens inside of a household. The other thing that we know is that children that grow up in those circumstances themselves are more likely to be involved in domestic violence related crimes down the road. This is a major challenge that we must meet as a community. Not this police alone, not the mayor's office alone. This is an issue that we've got to reach and meet as a community. There are a huge number of advocates that are out there all across our city who stand ready to aid people that are suffering from domestic violence. And I would just urge, if you are someone who's living in a house where you are not safe, please call 311. There is somebody on the other end of the line that is there, that is ready to help you get out of a dangerous circumstances, provide you with support, with transport, with lodging, so you, and if you have children, can live a safe life. But our police officers are valiant every single day, and we need to make sure that we remember that and that we thank them. And with that, we'll take a limited set of questions.
Mayor, maybe Sue can answer too. We've heard that the perpetrator is a person that has mental health issues and that he slipped his wrists when he was about to get caught by the police.
So we do have some information regarding the offender. He is a convicted felon. We don't have any type of diagnosis whether or not he has any mental health challenges. There is an injury to the offender's wrist, but that's all we know at this point about the offender.
You said this is a domestic situation between boyfriend and girlfriend. Was the status of the girlfriend?
Yeah, so there's no other injuries to anyone in the home that we responded to, but we're continuing the investigation.
Can you talk about the officer who is injured? Is it a male officer? How long has he been on the force?
We're going to talk very briefly about the officer because the family is still being notified. We have notified immediate family, but there's some other family that hadn't been notified. So he is a male officer. He has multiple gunshot wounds. He has 15 years on the police department. He's recovering, but more importantly, I'm just asking all of you on the media to share. We are asking for prayers for this family, for this officer and his family, and we're hoping and praying for a full recovery.
Andy Grip? Any charges yet? They expect this guy to be in bond for?
It's too early to tell right now, but we're continuing to work the investigation. We have a lot of work to do on the scene. Charges are pending, but we have the offender in custody, who we believe wounded our officer with gunfire. But we are continuing the investigation to see if there's any other offenders on scene that participated.
Myron from ABC about the mass shooting last night.
We wanted to stay on topic. We'll give an update later on that mass shooting. We don't have anyone in custody on that shooting. We have 2 people who were shot and killed from that scene. The other 3 were injured. There was a personal argument that led to the shooting. And we'll update you later in today as we learn more about last night.
Myron, last question, ABC. And he mentioned how many people were in that home that they were responding to, and if there was any.
We're still determining that, but at least 2 other people were in the home, but we're still determining if there were others.
Thank you very much.
I think she had a question down there.
Excuse me? No, not at this time. The shooting happened as soon as the officers got out of the elevator, so there was no time to get any other officers out there. We tried to get this officer to the hospital as soon as possible to hopefully save his life, and that's exactly what happened. Thank you all very much.
You said that the offender had injuries to the wrist. Were they taken to the hospital or no?
Yes, they're at the hospital being treated.
This one?
No, not this one.
Age on the offender?
We don't have that. Thank you all very much. We appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Isabel.
Anytime, guys.